Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I am Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the top headlines. The UN confirms a Russian attack on its aid convoy in Ukraine's Kherson region. Kyiv calls the alleged attack a brutal violation of international law. Israel identifies Nepalese citizen Bipin Joshi among the 4 deceased hostages returned by Hamas. The IDF says he died in captivity during the first month of the war 2 years ago. The United States denounces China for ramming a Filipino vessel in the South China Sea on Monday. Washington says Beijing's increasingly coercive actions undermine regional stability. Madagascar's president flees the country amid the island nation's spiralling political crisis. The country's National Assembly has been dissolved ahead of an opposition-led vote to force the president out of office. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai. This as the American tech giant unveils a massive hub for artificial intelligence in southern India. We begin with the latest on the Gaza ceasefire. US President Donald Trump and regional leaders from West Asia stood witness and signed a declaration that cemented a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, hours after Israel and Hamas exchanged hostages and Palestinians. US President Donald Trump hailed a tremendous day for the world and for the region, as more than 24 world leaders, including those of Egypt, Qatar and Türkiye, sat down for talks in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh. Calling it a momentous breakthrough, Trump added that the leaders assembled had achieved what everybody else said was impossible.
Momentous breakthrough that we're here to celebrate tonight is more than the end of the war in Gaza. It's with God's help, it'll be the new beginning for an entire beautiful Middle East. From this moment forward, we can build a region that's strong and stable and prosperous and united in rejecting the path of terror once and for all. We want to get rid of the terror and get on to other things. There are many other things in life that are so good.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is a tremendous day for the world. It's a tremendous day for the Middle East. And you can see that this is probably the greatest assemblage of countries in terms of wealth and power maybe ever assembled, and it's just an honor to be a part of it.
This document formalises a ceasefire that has effectively brought the war to a halt, with the leaders of the US, Egypt, Qatar and Türkiye signing as guarantors to the deal. In the declaration, the signatories pledged to pursue a comprehensive vision of peace, security and shared prosperity in the region. They also welcomed the progress achieved in establishing comprehensive and durable peace agreements in Gaza. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said the Gaza deal closes a painful chapter in human history and sets the stage for a two-state solution.
I reaffirm our support and aspiration for the implementation of this plan, creating the political horizon necessary for the implementation of the two-state solution, as it is the only way to achieve the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian and Israeli peoples to end the conflict and live in peace.
But the statement released by the White House later on Monday shed no light on the path ahead of peace between Israel and the Palestinians, and made no mention of one or two state solutions.
I'm talking about rebuilding Gaza. I'm not talking about single state or double state or two state. We're talking about the rebuilding of Gaza. A lot of people like the one-state solution. Some people like the two-state solution. We'll have to see. I haven't commented on that.
As part of the first phase of this deal, Hamas on Monday released the last 20 surviving hostages after nearly 2 years of captivity. In exchange, Israel released around 2,000 Palestinians it held in its jails. In Tel Aviv, a huge crowd had gathered to support families of hostages who erupted in joy and tears as the releases began. In the West Bank too, huge crowds welcomed home the first prisoners and celebrated their release. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a post on X, welcomed the release of all hostages after 2 years of captivity, calling it a tribute to unwavering peace efforts of President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. India also attended the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit with the Minister of State for External Affairs representing New Delhi. India reiterated that it stands for peace in the region and the resolution of issues through dialogue and diplomacy. Meanwhile, the United Nations has warned that Gaza's humanitarian crisis is far from over. The UN Relief Agency called for immediate access for aid and reconstruction, saying it is time to let in humanitarian help at scale. Even though the summit in Egypt echoes peace, much still remains to be negotiated. Among the potential sticking points are Hamas's refusal to disarm and Israel's failure to pledge full withdrawal from Gaza. So, the coming phases in Trump's plan for Gaza could possibly prove more complicated to implement. The Gaza Declaration marks a tentative end to one of the bloodiest chapters in West Asia's recent history. But, as history has so often shown, ceasefires may halt the fighting. Building peace is always the longer battle. Moving on, India delivered a sharp rebuke to Pakistan at the UN General Assembly, calling out Islamabad for grave violations of child rights and the killing and maiming of Afghan children. Speaking at the 80th session of the UNGA, India named Pakistan among the world's worst violators of the UN agenda on children and armed conflict. The strong response came days after border clashes between Pakistan and Taliban-ruled Afghanistan, which left dozens of troops dead on both sides. It also coincided with Taliban's foreign minister's visit to India, during which New Delhi upgraded ties with Kabul and reaffirmed its stand against all forms of cross-border terrorism. Citing the UN Secretary-General's 2025 report, India said Pakistan's cross-border shelling and airstrikes have killed several Afghan children, a pattern of violence the world can no longer ignore.
पड़ोसी पाकिस्तान इसके विपरीत उदाहरण प्रस्तुत करता है। यह एक ऐसा देश है जो CAC एजेंडे का सबसे गंभीर उल्लंघन करने वालों में से एक है। हम उनकी सीमाओं के भीतर बच्चों के साथ हो रहे गंभीर दुर्व्यवहारों से दुनिया का ध्यान हटाने के लिए उनके प्रयासों की कड़ी निंदा करते हैं। जैसा कि CAC पर महासचिव द्वारा 2025 में जारी रिपोर्ट और साथ साथ चल रहे सीमा पार आतंकवाद से भी स्पष्ट होता है।
India detailed how Pakistani forces have targeted schools and healthcare facilities, especially girls' schools. Referring to the UN report's findings, India pointed out that between January and December of 2024, Pakistani airstrikes near the Afghan border directly harmed Afghan children. India also called out Pakistan's hypocrisy for preaching morality at international forums while endangering its own people and those beyond its borders.
जैसा कि CAC पर महासचिव द्वारा 2025 में जारी रिपोर्ट और साथ साथ चल रहे सीमा पार आतंकवाद से भी स्पष्ट होता है कि अपनी सीमाओं से परे इस रिपोर्ट में पाकिस्तान द्वारा स्कूलों विशेषकर बालिका विद्यालयों में स्वास्थ्य कर्मियों पर किए हमलों का विस्तृत ब्यौरा प्रस्तुत किया गया है और अफगानिस्तान सीमा की उन घटनाओं के बारे में बताया गया है जहां पाकिस्तान द्वारा सीमा पार से की गई गोलीबारी और हवाई हमले सीधे तौर पर अफगान बच्चों की हत्या और अपहंगता के लिए जिम्मेदार हैं। पाकिस्तान को खुद के आईने में देखना चाहिए, इस मंच पर उपदेश देना बंद करना चाहिए, अपनी सीमाओं के भीतर बच्चों के लिए कार्य करना चाहिए।
India also reminded the world of the Pahalgam terror attack in April, when 26 innocent civilians were killed by Pakistan-backed terrorists. In response, India launched Operation Sindoor in May of 2025. a series of strikes that targeted 9 terrorist hideouts in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. New Delhi pointed out that during Operation Sindoor, Pakistan targeted India's border villages, resulting in deaths of civilians, including children. It is notable that in the immediate aftermath of Operation Sindoor, on May the 8th, at least 13 civilians were killed, while dozens more were injured in Pakistan shelling on Indian border villages.
यदि ऑपरेशन सिंदूर का उल्लेख किया जाए सभापति महोदय, तो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय समुदाय पाकिस्तान द्वारा प्रशिक्षित आतंकवादियों द्वारा किए गए क्रूर लक्षित हमलों को भूला नहीं है, जिसमें 22 अप्रैल 2025 को जम्मू और कश्मीर के पहलगांव में 26 निर्दोष नागरिकों की जान चली गई। एक सुविचारित और संतुलित प्रतिक्रिया में भारत ने आतंकवाद के खिलाफ अपनी रक्षा के लिए इसके अपराधियों को न्याय के कटघरे में लाने के लिए अपने वैध अधिकारों का प्रयोग किया और मई 2025 में ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के तहत 9 आतंकवादी ठिकानों पर लक्षित हमले किए। इसके विपरीत पाकिस्तान ने जानबूझकर हमारे सीमावर्ती इलाकों में बच्चों को और नागरिकों को अपना लक्ष्य बनाया।
With this strong message at the UN, India has not only defended its counter-terror operations, but also turned the spotlight on Pakistan, exposing it for killing the very children it claims to protect. We move on to gold and silver now, two metals that have long been symbols of wealth, security and stability. Recently, they've been making headlines for a reason that has stunned even seasoned investors. After hitting a milestone of $4,000 per ounce last week, gold prices on Tuesday climbed to a record $4,125, while silver reached an all-time high of around $52. To put that into perspective, gold is now nearly 56% higher than it was at the start of the year, and silver is up almost 64%. These are extraordinary numbers, levels not seen before. Both precious metals are rising faster than the markets expected, and experts say this might just be the beginning of another golden rally. So why is this happening? The first reason lies in interest rates, or the cost of borrowing money. The US Federal Reserve, which decides these rates, is expected to cut them soon. When interest rates go down, people earn less from savings in the bank. The second reason is uncertainty. The world economy is full of worry, from the ongoing US government shutdown to fresh trade tensions between America and China. China has tightened exports of rare earth metals, and in response, US President Trump has threatened new tariffs on Chinese goods. All this global friction makes investors nervous. That's where gold and silver comes in. They're known as safe haven assets, which means people trust them even when everything else looks shaky. There's more. Central banks, the big government banks of many countries, are also buying gold in large quantities. They do this to protect the wealth of their nations from risks in global economy. This is giving gold a further boost. Big financial players like hedge funds and exchange-traded funds are following the same path, pouring billions into precious metals this year. Silver, meanwhile, is riding on the same wave, but with some extra twists. Unlike gold, silver is also used in industries like electronics and solar panels, so when production slows or supply tightens, prices can move sharply. That's why silver often rises faster, but falls faster too. Experts at Goldman Sachs warn that silver may see more volatility, meaning its prices might swing up and down more wildly than gold. All of this connects to one bigger story: the value of the US dollar. Gold and silver prices usually rise when the dollar weakens, and that's happening right now. As the US economy slows, Treasury yields have fallen, and the dollar's value has dipped, making precious metals look even shinier in comparison. For ordinary people, it means one thing: those who have already invested in gold or silver are watching their holdings sparkle. But for those looking to buy now, the prices may feel sky high. And the question is, how much higher can they go? With gold breaking one record after another and silver racing right behind it, the world's attention now turns to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's speech later on Tuesday. His words could decide whether this rally continues or whether the glitter starts to fade. Now to Nepal, where a surge of young voters has brought new energy to the country's political landscape. First-time voters lined up in Kathmandu and other cities to register for the upcoming general elections, the first since deadly anti-corruption protests toppled the government last month. For many, this vote is not just about choosing leaders, but about changing a system they believe has failed them. At voter registration offices in Kathmandu, young citizens queued for hours to get their voter ID cards, eager to participate in shaping Nepal's future. Officials said the turnout among first-time voters has been exceptionally high.
I'm really excited to be here. I'm here to register for my voter ID card, and this will be my first time participating in an election.
While many young voters say they want leaders who can bring real change after years of political corruption and instability.
I am here to make my voter identity card because we recently had a Gen Z protest against corruption and formed a new government. Now we need to bring in new faces who can stop corruption and make the country better. That's why I'm here. I want to cast my vote for those who truly work for the good of the nation.
Youth leaders who took part in the protests say the elections are a way to honour those who lost their lives in last month's violence. One student activist said the new government was built on the dead bodies of students and that this vote is about removing long-time power holders who ignored public anger for years.
The pillar of this new government is built on the dead bodies of students. That's why, in the upcoming election, we want to uproot the so-called old faces who have been clinging to power for too long. I'm here to register for my new voter identity card for that very reason.
Election officials described the enthusiasm as unprecedented, with voter registration surging in recent days, rising from hundreds to thousands compared to previous polls.
It's been just 11 days since voter registration started, and a total of 4,382 people have registered their names as of Monday. The turnout is very high. At other times, we used to register only about 100 people in a single day.
Now the elections are scheduled for March the 5th, 2026, and are being held under the interim leadership of former Chief Justice Sushila Karki, who was appointed Prime Minister after the violent protests forced the previous government to step down. The unrest, triggered by a brief social media ban, quickly escalated into a nationwide movement against corruption and economic hardship, leaving at least 73 people dead and several government buildings destroyed. According to the Election Commission, party registrations will open in mid-November. New political groups seeking to contest must register by November the 15th, while existing parties have until November the 26th. The government has imposed a travel ban on former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, who is under investigation for his role in the unrest. However, Oli remains outspoken, recently calling for the reinstatement of the parliament that he claims was unconstitutionally dissolved. Meanwhile, questions persist over whether protesters and youth groups will form a new party or support existing ones. Despite the optimism among the youth, Nepal faces enormous challenges. The World Bank warned that political instability has further weakened the country's fragile economy, where 82% of the workforce is in informal jobs and GDP per capita stands at less than $1,500. Economic growth is expected to fall to 2.1%, worsening frustration among the youth, who see few opportunities at home. As Nepal heads towards the 2026 election, the rise in youth voter registration signals a turning point. For a generation scarred by alleged corruption and crisis, this election is about more than just politics. It's about reclaiming hope. Nepal's young voters have made one thing clear: change is coming, and they intend to lead it. That's all we have on the show today. We will see you again at the same time tomorrow. Until then, thank you for watching.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.